Good morning. I'm Jeff Freeman, president. Is it, mic's not working. There we go. Is the mic working now? Yeah, we're good. Good morning. I'm Jeff Freeman, president and CEO of the U.S. Travel Association. U.S. travel represents the $1.3 trillion travel industry, everything from airline to airports, attractions, cruise lines, and destinations from coast to coast. First, I'd like to thank Senator Moran today for making this meeting room possible. Senator Moran is a great champion of the traveler, always seeking ways to improve the travel experience, and we're certainly grateful for the partnership that we have with him. I also want to thank several members of our Commission on Seamless and Secure Travel who are with us today: Patty Cogswell, Stuart Baker, John Sanders, Sean Kinder. A big thank you to them for their support in the project and the work that you're going to hear about in a moment. I'm going to start with a few brief remarks. We'll show a quick video for you. I'll turn it over to Kevin McAleenan as soon as he walks in, and then we'll get to some Q&A. I must mention that Kevin's leadership, both as Acting Secretary of Homeland Security and as Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, has been instrumental in shaping a more efficient and secure travel system. That's exactly why when U.S. Travel launched the Commission on Seamless and Secure Travel more than a year ago, Kevin was the clear choice to lead the charge. Following Kevin's remarks, we'll open it up to some Q&A. We look forward to that discussion, and we're willing to have some conversation afterwards as well. Today, we're releasing a comprehensive report that's more than a year in the making, focused on air travel, with a particular emphasis on security and technology. But before we get into the findings, I want to take a moment to speak about air safety. Our thoughts are certainly with everyone affected by the tragic crash that took place at Reagan National just a couple weeks ago. No words can ease the profound grief that those who lost loved ones are experiencing. The National Transportation Safety Board is conducting a thorough investigation to determine the cause of the incident, and we trust their expertise to provide the insights needed to ensure that nothing like that ever happens again. The safety of our aviation system is and must always be the top priority. These investigations are a critical part of maintaining the safest aviation network in the world, and they often highlight areas where we can and must do better. Once the NTSB completes its report, Congress and the administration must act swiftly to close any identified gaps and strengthen our system further. While we don't yet know what caused this tragedy, we have known for a long time that our aviation infrastructure is facing serious challenges that threaten our global competitiveness. We suffer from inadequate air traffic control staffing, currently short somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 controllers. We have an outdated air traffic control technology. Many areas still relying on antiquated systems, including floppy disks and radar-based navigation. And we have aging infrastructure. Many of our air traffic control facilities were built for the last century and are in need of substantial investment and modernization. In remarks within the past 2 weeks, President Trump pointed to the obsolete patchwork guiding our current air travel system and his desire to see Congress fund system-wide upgrades. We appreciate the recognition from the President and Secretary Duffy to create an innovative, technologically advanced air traffic control system in the United States. And we welcome the disruptive thinking that they're bringing to the table. The reality is that bold leadership is required now to prioritize travel and meet a surging demand. Upgrades have never been more necessary, especially as more and more travelers are moving through our airports at a clip higher than ever before. Let me put it in perspective. On the busiest travel days, like Thanksgiving, TSA screens more than 3 million passengers. That happened 5 times in 2024. By next year, TSA will hit that number 50 times. That's the equivalent of 50 Thanksgivings. By 2028, we're looking at 100 days with 3 million passenger screenings. We're heading into an era of unprecedented demand. The 2025 Ryder Cup, 26 World Cup, the 2028 Olympics, whatever tour Taylor Swift announces next. All of these will generate millions of additional travelers, pushing our system even further. Today's report, developed by a distinguished commission of leaders with deep expertise in travel, security, and technology, lays out a clear, actionable plan to improve the U.S. travel experience. For the past year, this group has conducted a deep dive into the state of travel security, technology, and processes, both here in the U.S. and around the world. The result is a bold, practical roadmap to tackle challenges and create a world-class travel system. The recommendations in the report outline a major leap forward in how we move travelers faster, more securely, and more efficiently. Allow me to highlight several key elements of our proposals. First, let's address a glaring gap. The U.S. is the only G20 nation without a clear federal leader or agency dedicated to travel policy. The lack of centralized leadership creates a situation where obstacles to travel fester. Department of State, Transportation, Homeland Security, and others focusing on elements of the travel experience, but no one looking at the totality of the travel experience. In our experience, travel issues are most effectively addressed when they are clear White House priorities. Accordingly, we propose creating an interagency task force led by a senior White House official to oversee national travel policy and drive meaningful progress. One of the first things this group needs to address are the inexplicable wait times confronted by millions of travelers seeking a visa to visit the United States. Waits of 300, 400, 500 days for a visa interview are all too common, and they are undermining America's competitiveness. We call for the creation of a national vetting service paid for entirely by visa fees that will snuff out problematic wait times around the globe and ensure that all travelers are processed within 30 days or less. Next, it's time to rethink aviation security. We have not seen a breakthrough like TSA PreCheck in more than a decade. Many travelers in the standard screening line are experiencing the same process they experienced 20 years ago. It's time for the next big leap. Here's what that looks like. All passengers carry larger liquids, leave their electronics in their bags, and keep shoes, jackets, and belts on during screening. To get there, every TSA lane must be equipped with state-of-the-art technology, biometrics, and CT scanners within 5 years. Security checkpoints, however, are just one part of the equation. The arrival process must be just as seamless. Too many travelers, foreign and American alike, spend multiple hours to clear customs upon arrival at U.S. airports. Within 2 years, we need fully automated identity verification, advanced passenger screening, and biometric systems to dramatically accelerate customs processing. With this technology in place, we propose that no American returning from abroad should need to meet with a U.S. Customs officer unless they have something to declare. We can then devote more resources to our foreign guests and ensure that increased CBP staffing at airports creates both stronger security and better travel facilitation. This is the future of travel. It's bold, but it's also achievable, and it's time to make it happen. The technology exists. We have all the pieces, but the window to act is closing. Demand is growing. Technology is evolving. If we do not act decisively to modernize our infrastructure, we will miss a historic opportunity, frustrate millions of travelers daily, and fall behind our global competitors. The steps we take today will determine whether the U.S. remains a global leader in travel or struggles to keep pace. The recommendations in this report will ensure a more secure, smoother travel experience. The upcoming surge in travel demand is not a possibility. It's happening. The only question is whether or not we'll be ready and whether we will provide travelers with the experience they deserve. With that, please turn your attention to the video.
America's current travel experience is not world-class.
The current travel processes we have are meant to be operational, but they're not meant to be aspirational. They're not meant to build the world's best travel system. In so doing, they're leading to long delays. They're using antiquated technology, too few staff. We need to seize this opportunity to build a world-class travel system that sets the mark for the rest of the globe.
The U.S. ranks 17th out of 18 countries for global travel competitiveness. Due to outdated, underfunded, and inefficient travel systems, we're not ready to host the upcoming mega-decade of events that will draw millions of domestic and international travelers. This poses risks to our national security and hampers economic growth.
We need to take urgent and aggressive steps to improve the traveler experience of people coming to the United States because it's so critical to our economy.
Now is the time to make American travel the best in the world. To keep America safe and travel moving, the White House must take the lead on modernizing travel so the U.S. is ready to host these global events. It's imperative that the administration and Congress build a strong, modern, and efficient airport customs process that ends long wait times and protects against overstays. Implement a new, secure, and streamlined visa process that makes it easier for visitors to securely come into the U.S. and invest in the world's most advanced and secure airport screening processes and technologies like biometrics.
And so we have to constantly innovate and streamline in order to have the same security impact that we had 10 years ago with 50% more people.
This is the time for us to showcase all the greatness that America has to offer. And with leadership from the White House and from Congress, we'll be able to set ourselves up to be the most globally competitive country for decades to come.
Read the full report and recommendations at showcaseamericantravel.org.
Good morning. Kevin McAleen and I had the privilege of chairing the Seamless and Secure Travel Commission, working with U.S. Travel and some tremendous colleagues right here in the front row. It's good to be back in the Senate Visitor Center without having to give a classified briefing to skeptical members. But it's even more rewarding to have the chance to talk about the tremendous opportunities we have to make American travel the best in the world. On a personal note, I've been a champion of increased travel, seamless and secure kind, since I worked on the development of the Global Entry Program, biometric entry and exit, pre-clearance expansion, and enhanced visa and ESTA vetting programs at U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the Department of Homeland Security. Indeed, I had the privilege of partnering with a number of folks here today on those efforts, and that work required White House and congressional support, close collaboration across the interagency, and critically, full partnership with private sector stakeholders in the travel industry to be successful. The positive lessons learned then, combined with the sheer scale of the opportunity for the American economy in front of us, as well as the sense of urgency conveyed by the competitive landscape that Jeff just outlined, were the motivating factors for me to agree to chair, and I think for some of my colleagues to participate in the work of the commission. I want to tell you a little bit about the team and their work. First, I'd like to commend U.S. Travel for really bringing together such an accomplished and expert group, multiple former agency heads and leaders from key departments involved in securing and facilitating travel, former diplomats, private sector experts, and international travel sector luminaries. It certainly made my job a lot easier to have that level of expertise, and I thank them for their time and commitment. Next, I want to talk about the process. I've had the opportunity to participate in or even organize multiple commissions and advisory bodies, both in and outside of government. And I have to say that the work that U.S. Travel orchestrated was second to none. First, the commission was given adequate time and support to do the work. We were able to establish access and dialogue with the key agencies and their teams working travel issues. The Transportation Security Administration and U.S. Customs and Border Protection really could not have been more accommodating and engaging, supporting multiple headquarters and field visits to see their challenges and the innovations they were developing to confront them firsthand. These conversations and experiences were invaluable to the Commission in shaping their recommendations and recognizing the foundational work already underway. Commission members, alongside U.S. travel, were also able to visit foreign airports and meet with international leaders in the travel arena, as well as State Department officials, both at the embassy in London as well as at headquarters. These engagements were comprehensive, covering all aspects of a traveler's journey to and through the United States, from the time of application for a visa or ESTA to CBP's processing of the border to TSA's aviation security work in the domestic side. All of these efforts, further bolstered by comparison against international best practices and assessed through the various lenses of expertise from across the Commission, helped inform and refine our recommendations. So let me talk about those recommendations for a moment. I certainly did not set out to prove the value of biometric identity and facial comparison this morning, but I did show up at the Capitol without my physical ID and got to experience the joy of driving back home to get it. We're proposing a set of recommendations where you don't have to do that. The Commission, first of all, agrees strongly that White House leadership is critical. With the Trump administration's focus on strengthening the U.S. economy across all sectors, the opportunity to enhance economic growth through increasing the volume of international visitors is compelling. Our goal in closing the gap to the market share we had before COVID in 2019, but also pushing beyond that level, will create a massive economic boom and help balance the books with international trading partners globally. The recommendations presented for applying advanced technology to streamline travel while enhancing security are feasible, achievable, and affordable, especially when measured against the economic benefits. CBP and TSA have already taken huge strides towards securing passengers and their baggage through confirming identity with biometrics, deploying advanced screening systems, and applying cutting-edge analytics and AI. They need several things to make further progress. One, continued support with greater resources to complete major technology rollouts, including in-stream program innovations. Two, legislative and policy support to expand partnerships on digital identity, as well as support the use of biometrics in the travel cycle. We've seen consistently that the American people support using biometrics to streamline their travel experience. Three, a commitment to the staffing levels for law enforcement, security, and administrative personnel necessary to carry out these complex missions. We can do it more efficiently with the right mix of people. These investments can be made, I think, affordably and will pay for themselves many times over. Even during the work of the Commission over the past year, we saw the agencies working hard to develop new programs and innovate. In fact, CBP implemented 2 new programs to streamline arrivals for trusted travelers in the Global Entry Program and low-risk U.S. citizens, as Jeff was talking about, returning home, the Simplified Border Entry Program and the Enhanced Passenger Processing Program. Both use biometric facial comparison technology to quickly and seamlessly confirm identity and eligibility to allow for an expedited entry process. Taking away the administrative element of identity confirmation allows CBP officers to focus on those travelers that might present a higher risk, as opposed to doing administrative processing on low-risk arrivals. TSA, for its part, partners closely with CBP on biometric systems using the Traveler Verification Service. But they're also really leading the development of digital identity nationally, partnering with 12 states on mobile driver's license to support expanded use and adoption of TSA's PreCheck touchless identity solution. It's about at 12 airports now. If you haven't tried it, I think it's an outstanding experience, a huge improvement for travel. At the same time, they're biometrically enabled credentialing authenticating technology, which both confirms and allows TSA officers to engage with the traveler. It is a huge advance that is woefully behind schedule because of funding. That's another issue that we're asking for more resources. And that's just some of the work underway for securing the traveler. On baggage, similarly promising efforts are underway both for providing greater security for the passenger, both in terms of aligning security commitments and standards with foreign partners, but also for ensuring that we don't have to touch international bags more than once. Once you check it in at the foreign destination, it can be moved from an international to domestic flight, tail to tail, without bringing it back in for recheck upon arrival. On top of that, TSA is deploying computed tomography, advanced CT scanners at checkpoints. Those are going to provide much higher security better image resolution, and allow for travelers to move more swiftly through checkpoints as we start to apply advanced algorithms and AI support to those systems. These systems, when supported by those advanced detection algorithms, are being deployed across the country today and are going to enable us to further align with foreign partners on standards through the one-stop security program. I'm really excited about one-stop security. The notion of having both the traveler and the baggage screened to the same standard at a foreign airport before takeoff to the US, so that a passenger can move not only through the CBP process, but back toward their next aircraft seamlessly, is going to be a very effective program. And we need to support that and expand it. And Congress's legislative support has been critical there. So I think these are exciting and promising initiatives, and they need to be further developed and rapidly deployed. To do that, again, we need those greater resources and the legislative and policy support to transform each aspect of the travel cycle. The growing volumes of travel demand it, but at the same time, we recognize that and we need to prioritize the fact that these higher volumes really come against the backdrop of even greater and ever evolving security challenges and safety threats. That requires collaboration and vigilance across the interagency and across the travel cycle. If we are collectively to take advantage of this call to action to make the U.S. the most competitive travel destination in the world, it's going to require a concerted and comprehensive effort. I believe U.S. Travel and our commission have offered a compelling set of recommendations to achieve these goals, and would ask the key stakeholders in this room, in Congress, and in the private sector to support them, both on behalf of the men and women that work so hard to keep us safe, but also the multitudes of Americans that will benefit from growing travel to the United States. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Kevin. It was by no means intentional to make you a living example of the benefit of biometrics over plastic cards, but glad that worked out and glad you're here. The message today is clear. The status quo is not an option. Travel demand is surging, our infrastructure is aging, and global competitors are moving fast, in most cases, much faster than the United States. If we fail to act, we risk turning travelers away, ceding economic opportunities, and compromising our leadership in the world. The Commission's recommendations are necessary transformations. This is a once-in-a-generation chance for President Trump and Congress to modernize travel, enhance security, and unlock what we estimate to be a $100 billion opportunity in just the next 4 years. Success obviously will not come from small fixes or slow-moving reforms. It's going to take bold action, and that bold action has to start now. With that, we will conclude. We're happy to take some questions, Kevin and I both. We'll do that for a few minutes. Thank you.
Sally Braley with Sports Travel Magazine and Meetings and Conventions Magazine. How concerned is U.S. travel that U.S. host cities will have trouble attracting visitors to these mega sports events that are coming to town?
So the U.S. remains the world's most desired nation to visit. Unfortunately, our market share of travelers, global travelers, has declined by more than 40% since 2000. People want to come, but they're not coming. We've got to figure out why that is. It gets down to these visa wait times. It gets down to the customs inefficiencies. It gets down to a perception in instances that people aren't welcome. We're very concerned, right? We need to tap into that. We have not even gotten back to pre-pandemic numbers when it comes back to international travelers. We're only at about 85% of where we were in 2019. 2018 was the peak of international travel to the United States. We're very concerned that we're not where we need to be. We're concerned that we won't be able to take advantage of this enormous opportunity we have over the next several years. And that's why we're calling for a degree of urgency to really there's a reason we went for the World Cup. There's a reason we went for the Olympics, and it's to capitalize on those things. But to capitalize on those things, we've got to make some of the reforms that we talked about today.
Hi, good morning. Will Geisbon at the Air Current. I noticed a lot of these recommendations are particularly focused around air travel. And obviously just kind of looking at the news right now with layoffs at FAA and a host of other sort of leadership vacancies. Can you talk a little bit about how that might impact these and what you guys are specifically monitoring as we move on here and in the coming weeks and months? Thank you.
Yeah, the U.S. has the world's most complex and safest aviation system. We're confident in that. Now, we're not naive. We're certainly aware of what's happening around us, whether it was the incident here, the incident in Toronto most recently. We're all aware of that. We're also aware of the perception issues, right? Travelers grow concerned based on what they see. We know safety is job number one. We know safety is the top priority. We certainly believe that to be true within this administration. We do believe we've missed opportunities in recent years. You know, while the last administration was focused on fines and fees, somewhat cynically, they weren't focusing on getting the air traffic controllers that we needed. They weren't focusing on the aging infrastructure. These issues are right here. They're right in front of us. We need a degree of urgency to solve those things. As I mentioned in my remarks, we're hopeful that what the president, what Secretary Duffy are bringing to the table is a degree of disruption that this system needs, because doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome isn't going to get where we need to get to. So we're hopeful that we will get the investments we need in the aviation system. We certainly encourage travelers to continue to fly. We're seeing the demand that's out there. I think Americans are confident in the safety of the system, but we need to know that that concern, that commitment to investment is shared across the board.
Good morning, Danny Navarro, a travel football fan on social media. So I've been helping fans save money and, provide travel tips for the 2026 World Cup. And a common concern that they have been sharing is potential price gouging by the airline and hotel industry. They're already seeing it potentially with fake ticket postings and whatnot. And I know that's a separate FIFA issue, but when it comes to travel, how are we going to help consumers be able to not deal with potential price gouging, especially with last minute travel? How are we going to ensure that fans are going to be able to go to these games in the first place? I mean, one thing is having the stadiums and be able to sell tickets, but where are they going to stay? I know that many of the cities that are hosting World Cup matches have been dealing with hotel room shortages. What are some of the recommendations on that front?
You know, the World Cup's going to take place in 11 cities within the United States. These are prominent cities that are used to hosting events. I joked about Taylor Swift before. Most of these cities have just seen that concert tour come through. They're used to extraordinary demand. Both the hotels that are there, the airlines that often increase capacity to these destinations as needed. I think we'll continue to see that. I think we'll see airlines add routes where necessary. That's a way of managing prices. And we certainly see it with hotels who are able to ebb and flow, obviously, on their capacity. We have not seen any issues of price gouging during previous events. I have no reason to think that we're going to see legitimate brands, major aspects of the travel industry engaging in any price gouging going forward. This is an industry that wants to maximize the opportunity, provide the traveler with the experience that they deserve and that they desire. And I'm confident that that aspect of it will go off without a hitch. Now, there's no doubt that one thing working a challenge we have in the United States right now is, if you want to put it that way, is the dollar is strong. So for foreign travelers that want to come here, it is more expensive than it is in a lot of other countries. That's a legitimate issue that some travelers confront. My point of view would be that that's an issue that as an industry we can't control, but all the more reason we need to control these other issues that are within our control. We've got to make sure we remove these frictions from the process to give the traveler the experience they deserve. Because if we're giving them a friction-filled experience and higher prices, that's a recipe for disaster.
Hi guys, my name is Jessica. I'm with Congresswoman Cass's office, so thank you for coming. I was going to ask you a question about vaccines and travel. Now that we're seeing all these changes kind of to health initiatives, vaccine initiatives, are you seeing or are you anticipating any efforts in the future that will complicate people traveling to and from the United States? Thank you.
You know, thanks for the question. We've seen an extraordinary rebound in travel post-pandemic, at least domestically. People want to travel. They've made travel more of a priority than it ever was before. We've seen a shift in how people spend money today post-pandemic. They're more interested in buying experiences than they are goods. We think that will continue. We think Americans in particular have found there's a newfound appreciation for the experiences, the memories, the lessons that travel provides. We're confident that that will continue. I think we all learned a lot of painful lessons through the pandemic, but one of the good things that comes out of that, at least for us, is the value of travel has been cemented, and we expect that to continue.
Hi, Cassie Simeon with Spectrum News. It was alluded to a little bit earlier in a question about the cuts that we have seen from the Trump administration so far. But when we're having these discussions as a country about trying to cut down federal spending, some of these suggestions would require, pretty hefty investments in our travel industry. Can you talk a little bit about what the investment itself will look like and what these conversations you're having with both the administration and Congress to try and achieve these goals? And, we're talking about a budget coming up. Are you guys having these discussions now as this budget is being negotiated?
Yeah, so much of the discussion of cuts, and thank you for the question, so much of the discussion of cuts has been about waste, fraud, and abuse. Those are discussions we should always be having. What we're talking about is investments to improve security, investments to improve safety, investments to improve the travel experience. That's the polar opposite of waste, fraud, and abuse. And we believe, and have had conversations to lead us to believe this way, that investments in those types of activities are the types of investments that the administration is looking to make. The president has been outspoken about making this the gold standard of World Cups, the best Olympics that has ever been held, right? To do those things, to achieve those goals, you've got to make some of these investments. So based on the conversations that we've had to date, we're confident that there is a willingness to make investments where necessary, and that it isn't, we can do both of these things. We can identify waste in the system while also investing in other areas that are needing that. The other point I would make is several of the initiatives I mentioned, I'll point to the National Vetting Service on visas, are paid for with visa fees, right? So a lot of these various programs, the money is already there. How do we allocate that money in a smarter way? That's where some of this disruption that's being promised is actually a good thing. It's getting us to think much differently about how dollars are allocated today and how we can be more efficient in the future. Do anything with that?
Sure. Yeah, I would just add the investments the commission recommended were focused on investments that would have a significant economic return. For instance, we submit every year, U.S. Customs Border Protection submits every year a staffing requirement to Congress based on an analysis called the workload staffing model. The underpinning for that was a study that demonstrated that one additional CBP officer applied at a high wait time port could create 33 American jobs with the increased facilitation and reduction in wait times. The same thing is going to happen with technology that streamlines these processes, and that's what we're presenting. And we think those types of recommendations that have that return on investment, that apply advanced technology, are going to be well received by Congress and the administration.
Got a microphone coming. We'll take two more questions. Sean, we'll get to you next.
Hi, I'm Weslyn Hansen with Meritalk. I'm wondering, with the increased rollout of biometric technology, what would enhanced data privacy protections look like?
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen and learned from travelers is their willingness to give more information in exchange for a better travel experience. Upwards of 90% of travelers have said they're willing to share more information about themselves if it results in a better travel experience. We've seen that with TSA PreCheck. We've seen it with Global Entry, where travelers are giving information. They're confident that that information is protected. We've had good experiences with both of those programs. We're confident we'll have good experiences going forward. But I think it's important to note that travelers are speaking clearly and loudly that if they could have a better experience, they're willing to share more information about themselves.
Yeah, I would just add briefly, the implementation of this technology by the Department of Homeland Security in particular, CBP and TSA, is very well overseen and very well thought through. Congressional committees, privacy impact assessments, statement of records notices about how the information is protected and used. It's a really comprehensive network and probably one of the most carefully evaluated systems for using biometrics, I think, in the world.
The last point I'm going to make on that, just go ahead while you head over. The last point I'm going to make on that is, when you talk to officials at TSA, when you talk to officials elsewhere in the government, one of the points they make is how unreliable some of the information is we're using today. When you look at the plastic driver's license that Kevin likes to forget, when you look at that thing, I think TSA says upwards of 70% of the time it's accurate. When you look at biometrics, over 99% of the time it's accurate. So if we're certain about the need for safety, if we really want to focus on security, I think we have to look at what the data says and understand that some of the tools we're using today are simply outdated.
Hi, Jeff. My name's Sean O'Neill. I'm with Skipped, which is a travel news publication. If I'm a congressperson and I'm getting a 5-minute briefing of this, I could imagine having questions about two of the premises. One of them about the U.S. being competitive, and the other about using government to try to solve the problems. I read my colleague Lily Gurma's piece in Bloomberg about U.S. competitiveness, but the congressperson might not have. And so, to me, it's the greatest country in the world. People are always going to want to come here. Being off 15% from pandemic highs doesn't sound so bad. We'll gradually get back there. And how do I know that using more government to try to solve a problem is going to be a good idea? That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. So can you connect the dots a bit in terms of how these proposals are in line with trying to be using technology to make government more efficient, in line with what the Trump administration has as its goals, and connecting exactly what in a sort of like a soundbite version of what you've already said about what the missed economic opportunity is, because I don't quite get it.
Yeah, let's take both the issues. Let's take the issue of competitiveness. The United States welcomed about 64, I hope my numbers are accurate again, we're 85% of where we were. We welcomed about 64 million visitors last year versus over 70 million visitors before the pandemic. If we're missing 10 million visitors a year, each one of those visitors spending about $5,000 per person per visit, you can imagine the economics of this situation and what's being lost. So I think the competitive side of this is really quite clear. We're missing billions and billions of dollars in travel spending in the United States. And on top of that, while the US is still at pre-pandemic numbers, what we're seeing elsewhere in the world is most countries are exceeding where they were before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it's also worth noting, the United States had about a $10 billion travel trade surplus. Americans spent $10 billion less overseas than foreign travelers spent here. Today, we have a $40 billion travel trade deficit. That is a swing of $50 billion in terms of what Americans are spending elsewhere versus what foreign travelers are spending here. If that's not a critical situation, if that doesn't speak to a lack of competitiveness, I don't know what does. Right? We've got to get these issues addressed. So how do you address them? And what is everyone's role? Because I agree, obviously, the private sector has a role here. The public sector has a role here. When you look at why travelers aren't coming, when you go talk to them about why they're not coming, in the countries around the world where visas are required, that's 45% of countries. The visa issue is the single biggest deterrent to visiting the United States. Wait times in India right now exceed 400 days. Wait times in Colombia right now exceed 700 days. Those are not problems the private sector can solve. Those are problems the government made and that the government needs to resolve. Right? These are deterring travelers from coming. The customs issues, deterring travelers from coming. The inefficiency. Kevin spoke before about travelers who need to come here, check their bag, get to the US, go pick up their bag, go check it back in, go back through TSA. Remarkably inefficient. If we can't solve those problems, the US can't be competitive. That's the role for the federal government. That's why we want to partner with them and work together. And I'll stress, and Kevin mentioned some of his comments, that much of the work we've produced today has been done by learning from the officials at TSA, from the officials at Customs and Border Protection, from the officials elsewhere in government. This is done with their partnership. This is done with their input, them guiding us in terms of what reforms need to take place to build a better travel system. So I'm confident that the competitiveness issue is quite clear, and the role for the government is quite obvious here in this situation, and we look forward to working with them to resolve the issues. Anything I left out? Thank you very much. I think that we have, and I just want to stress this again, we have an extraordinary opportunity in front of us. the Ryder Cup, the World Cup, the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, other events that are happening. Nowhere else in the world has the opportunities that the United States has over the next decade. The question is, are we going to capitalize on those opportunities? Because right now we are on pace to create a situation of traveler frustration, a situation where travelers choose not to come or move about the United States. And we would suggest to you that that option is not acceptable. Thank you very much.